Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about something that typically isn't even remotely talked about nowadays in social medias when you're regarding books. Because a lot of times when we sit down and we listen to a book podcast, we're listening to everyone talking about the newest enemies to lovers. So, let's get on into the podcast. Sorry, wrong one, okay. Welcome to Book Talk, Book Bands and Where the Crawdads Sings by Delilah Owens. Today, this book that we're talking about, a lot of people know the movie more, Where the Crawdads Sing. Because kind of Netflix made a movie about it, and when Netflix makes a movie about a book, everyone knows the movie more than the book now. So we're going to talk about banned books and why Where the Crawdads Sings by Delilah Owens is a banned book in multiple different areas in public settings like schools, states, or public libraries. First, let's talk about what is book banning. Book banning can be the removal or the restriction of a book. This means that it was challenged by a group of moms, parents, or public settings, and they decided to then remove or restrict the book in that area or in that public setting. This is typically, like stated before, shown in public libraries or public schools, like high schools, middle schools, or just your local library down the street. This is usually constricted to an in-state, district, or country area. Usually when there's a book banning in just one area, it is restricted to that area that was being banned in, or that country, etc. There is a lot of times it is mostly in-state or in-district banning, but there are countrywide bans in books as well. Why are these books banned? Usually it's because of its content, its ideas, or its themes in the text. To sexual violence, it could do to things like rape or domestic violence, just things that can be seen as more mature topics that younger people or certain select peoples don't find appropriate to be reading about. And while some people think it's subjective by age, other people think it's just the book should be banned overall. Let's talk about some books that have been challenged to be banned books, but actually aren't. The Great Gatsby. Well, typically you would be like, okay, maybe it has some mature topics. The reason why this book was challenged in the area that it was because the topics of greed. Yeah. So apparently we can just challenge a book to be banned because it's just greed. I mean, so did Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob, but whatever. The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Yeah. Apparently there was multiple challenges of this too, not just one. In one district there was, I think, about 3 that I read about how they were trying to challenge this book because of the mature topics. Like, she's writing about things that actually happened. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is the next one, which I can understand. I mean, I think we all cried at the end of the book. No spoilers, but it's a hard one to read. But a lot of people didn't like that the book just talked about disabilities and also the sexual violence that came into it. But I mean, it wasn't. If you read the book, you know. But the sexual violence was more just lack of knowledge, and the way they described it, I felt like showed some maturity and knowledge that need to be learned by a lot of people. Animal Farm by George Orwell, and finally, last on the list is Charlotte's Web. I'm gonna leave you with that because when I read that on the list of books that were being challenged to ban, and the reason it was being banned, I laughed. I laughed because it was being challenged to ban because animals were speaking. So, if an animal speaks, the book should be banned. I don't know if the people that challenged the book ever watched Mickey Mouse, but it's a talking mouse teaching little kids. But Charlotte's Web was being challenged to be banned because it has talking animals. Next, we're going to be just giving a bit of a rundown to the book Where the Crawdads Sings by Delilah Owens. There will be spoilers of the books in this rundown just to try to give some ideas of what the book's about before we go over why it was challenged. So we're going to talk about the beginning, just a rundown, isolation, and the growth that she went through. Our main character is Kaya, and throughout the book, her mother leaves when she's around 6. Her father leaves her when she's around 10, and in between that, all her older siblings leave the home. This leaves then Kaya alone in the family home with literally nothing. She taught herself how to cook even after her mother left and it was just her father. Her father dealt with a lot of gambling issues and he dealt with a lot of alcoholism. She was left to cook them dinner a lot of times, and he kind of praised her for knowing this knowledge, even though he should have been praising her for being a kid and going to school. She had tried going out to school because there were some government people that came out and assisted her going to school, but it did not go out well at all for her. So she didn't. She continued to live on her own and kind of make her own way, learning the way of the marsh on different things that her older siblings and parents had kind of taught her in her younger days before her family fell apart. Then we're going to go to the era of during and after Tate. Tate is a friend of her older brother Jody that had left. He taught her to read and write and do different school things and kind of helped her build her knowledge because she loved all these poetry books and different paintings and things like that from her mother's collection, different things that she saw throughout like her time just being alive, being alone. I mean, in your alone time and isolation, you'd probably do some reading too, even if it's not your type of thing. So Tate was very close. He was older than her, and the age gap kind of makes you question the flirty nature that goes between these two characters, but he is very impactful on how Kaya kind of grows to be who she is and how she learns who she wants to be. Tate then later leaves to go further his education at school. He had to leave. He didn't say goodbye to Kaya in a cowardly way, just knowing he couldn't take her with him because she really only ever knew the marsh and he knew she couldn't withstand the city and different things like that. Next we go on to during and after Chase. Chase Andrews is someone that Kaya meets after Tate leaves. They kind of interact when she starts hanging out with a group of girls. Chase and her have a very intimate relationship from the beginning, and then they later further bloom a relationship. He later cheats on her with someone who's very rich and kind of in his world, and Kaya kind of went through a phase of trying to change herself to match into Chase's life because he'd always hang out with her and have a very intimate, graphic, almost non-consensual feeling. There is some sexual violence kind of feeling ideas of a lot of their intimate moments when being described. He kind of hid her away and didn't want his family to see her, but he still wanted to see her and kind of talked about engagement and moving in together and having a life together, and this is their special spot. But he was secretly had a fiance and just didn't want anyone to know about Kaya. Then later, throughout the whole book, you're getting 2 point of views from back in the day to in present time, and then everything lines up together, and then it's just present time, and then you have a 5-year gap. So there's a trial because Chase Andrews dies. So we learn a lot about how Kaya meets Chase Andrews, how it ended, and then later his physical attack on her, and he tried to rape her even. And in the trial, this is brought up. So Kaya is being convicted of this murder of Chase Andrews. Tate comes back. They rekindle their friendship. And then later we find out 5 years later, kind of how Kaya and Tate's relationship bloomed and how Kaya lived after the whole trial and after the murder of Chase Andrews. We're going to go over the reasons that this book is being challenged to being banned. First off, description of sexual assault. The scene that Kaya is being attacked by Chase and he is trying to rape her is pretty graphic and it's very descriptional. There's also other intimate moments that were being described and it did not seem very healthy when in retrospect of like a healthy intimate moment between a respectful partner. There's also other moments between Ma and Pa in the beginning that weren't sexual, but were more violent, but had sexual undertones that were kind of described. Then we move on to violence being the next reason this book is being challenged or being banned. Violence is very heavy. There's a lot of domestic violence being talked about throughout the book on Ma and Pa and how that affects Kaya's, like the way she sees different people in different relationships. Pa is very abusive to Kaya even after Ma leaves in a mental, physical, and verbal way. The next reason for it being banned is racial stereotypes. There are a lot of different characters that are seen and not being white, and the way they're kind of talked about in their jobs and their way of living can be very racial, like stereotypes. Like in the book is placed back, we go from like the 1960s to the 1970s. It is placed in an older time period, which some of it can be like time period accurate kind of descriptions, but it is still very like stereotypical on how they're talked about, so it can be very damaging to that community and also how the characters are seen. The last reason is the controversy with the author. The author actually went on a trip with her husband and stepson, and there was someone that was killed on this trip. And later on, it was actually her stepson was one of the main people that were being accused of being the killer. And there is a lot of correlations between the case and the book based off the way that like the settings are, the way people talk and different things like that. They're just really close-knit, so people really think that this book has some correlation to that case. Book be banned. No. I think Where the Crawdads Sings by Delilah Owens should not be a banned book. Why should the book be banned at all for all? I don't think it should, and I think books shouldn't be banned for all. I think in district or schools or restrictions can be okay, but I don't think it should be a countrywide ban or anything further than that. This book kinda, I feel, teaches you a lot in how to look for warning signs in domestic and verbal abuse. So I do not think this book should be banned at all, and I don't agree with any of the reasons that it was being banned for. What if book banning was good? There are some books like Lolita by Vladimir Novakov that probably should be banned. The story covers a lot of very sensitive topics, and it follows a man that marries a mother to get close to a child, continues to groom her, and SIA her. And it is a very glamorized way of showing a child getting used and abused emotionally and in so many different ways. So that book should be banned. So book banning can be seen as good things because that book isn't appropriate, it doesn't send right messages, and it can honestly glamorize pedophilia. But what makes it that a book should be banned or not? I mean, there are topics in Where the Crawdads Sing where, I would say that it shouldn't be banned because I'm very much on the side of that book shouldn't be banned. But other people would see those topics and think the book should be banned. And honestly, I'm on team books should be restricted, not banned. To a point until it gets to things like Lolita where we're glamorizing pedophilia, and honestly, that book probably has fed many pedophilic fantasies. Where the Crawdads Sing isn't fulfilling fantasies at all or making these ideas that murder is good or domestic violence is good at all. So I think it's just morally, when a book like goes over that moral line of good or bad, that's really when we should ban a book or not. I mean, you can't really determine whether it's the topics or opinions on the book that determine if it should be banned or not. What if Where the Crawdads Sing should be banned? I mean, the sexual violence can be extremely graphic, and from a counter-argument standpoint, it can be too much for a lot of people. I mean, I even had to stop a little bit when I was reading some of the chapters describing some of the intimate moments, and especially during the essay scene. I mean, it was a very graphic assault, and you kind of got to the way the words were, like, given to us. You kind of got to see stuff from Kaya's perspective and feel her fear, especially as another young woman. I mean, it was really scary. The racial stereotypes can push a narrative of the story that isn't correct. Like I've said before, it can kind of start giving an alternative motive to some of the interactions that Kaya has with people who are non-white in the story, and those racial stereotypes can alter things that shouldn't be altered. I mean, the story is about Kaya's life and how it develops and how things have been going with her. Why are we pushing these racial stereotypes? I mean, it's not contributing anything to the plot. It's just to kind of distract the reader and to add way too much that isn't needed, and it's honestly kind of gross. So, I mean, what if it should be banned for that? I could see it. I could see that so many people want to throw a counter-argument of, well, this or that for that, especially because I know it was placed in the 1960s to the 1970s. You still probably shouldn't do that. I mean, it just takes away so much from the actual plot point in what Kaya is actually trying to show you with her words. The violence and domestic violence shown in the book. Especially in those first couple chapters, the way the author describes things, especially about Mom's bruises and how they linger in her skin and her hiding them. I mean, that can be very triggering for people, especially if they're escaping that situation or they're currently in a situation like that. It can be triggering. It can be too much. And the way it is described, it's not like some books where they just try to cover it up. It's very descriptive, whether it's directly given to you or it's given in figurative language. It's very descriptive of all the abuse going on and all the violence that's happening. The author's controversy, let's talk about that a little bit. And honestly, this would be my biggest reason for me seeing that people want this book banned, is for the controversy with the author and their family and how close it is to the book, and how some people are kind of questioning how authentic the book just came to be, or if it's slightly based off the moments that happened in the murder that they were kind of a part of. I mean, it involved poachers and the settings are very similar. I mean, I wouldn't want to read a book if I knew it was to cover a murder, or at least the murder influenced the author. I think that's kind of gruesome to think about. Like, oh yeah, no, I read this one book and then I found out that the book was actually very heavily correlated with this murder. But she never actually confirmed or denied a lot of these allegations. She just kind of pushed it along, and there are some sources that have said that she has confirmed of the situation, denied that her stepson was the murderer because he was never actually arrested or anything for it. He was just kind of on the suspect list. So, I mean, do with that what you want to. In conclusion, I do not think this book should be banned. At least not for a lot of the reasons that people are saying it should be banned. And in my counter argument, I kind of talked about how I could see the perspective of people, especially with the author's controversy being so close to all the stuff she wrote in the book. But I'm completely on the side that Where the Crawdads, circling back to what I've been saying, age restrictions can be a thing. As much as people don't really want to restrict their child and this or that, if you're going to make a huge fuss and get a book ban, why don't you just restrict and have boundaries with books? schools have teachers filling out permission slips for kids to be able to read mature topics and different things like that, which is very good. And I think parents, especially when kids get books outside of school from public libraries, should just kind of should probably just look out for what their kid is reading and try to just make at home boundaries and restrictions. As always, here are my references to back up, kind of give sources and let you do further digging and further information on these topics that we've talked about today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you so much for listening to the podcast on our book talk.